Hello, everybody. It is 7:01. I am 1 minute late. I apologize, but I'm super excited to be going live with you on my YouTube channel after 3 weeks off. So over Labor Day, I decided to take a couple weeks off and relax. Just kidding. I didn't do any of that. I just decided to do other work things. But really excited to be getting back into the swing of these virtual classes. And tonight's class is long in the making. I am really excited about finally teaching this class online. I've taught this class in person quite a few times, and I talk about it all the time, but it'll be fun to teach this class online. So if you're tuned in, I'd love to hear where you are, who you are, where you're coming from. Jenna and Jared, hello. Super excited to see all of you all tonight. So if you are tuned in, and maybe this is playing like on a big screen TV or something like that, if you want to participate in the chat room, I'd love to have your thoughts. This is a really fun class to be able to hear people's tasting notes and ideas about what Beaujolais is and how they think about these wines. So if you could also be playing the video on like an iPad, a tablet, a phone, or something like that, just on mute. Much easier to type in comments in the chat room if you are doing it like that and then it's playing on a big screen TV. Regardless, we're going to have a good time, even if you're not participating in the chat room. Just FYI, if you are wanting to participate in the chat room and can't figure it out, you have to be signed in to whatever email account is connected to your YouTube. So on the top right-hand corner of your computer screen, if it says sign in and it has that little circle with like a blank profile picture, then you're not signed in. You have to be signed in to whatever account is connected, whatever email account is connected. Then you can participate in the chat room, but that has to be the first thing. So love to hear your thoughts. Great to see Rick and from Williamsburg. Bonsoir. Fabulous to see you. Amanda Staples also, and John also from, and Christine, cool, also from Williamsburg. Dominica from Williamsburg. Are you in Williamsburg or are you in North Carolina these days? Dominica, I know you travel all the time. Tawana Wynn, so excited to see you. The people who attend all of the virtual wine classes, I felt really bad for taking 3 weeks off, but it's good to see everybody back again. So back in Virginia. All right, fabulous. Hey, Ryan. Yes, I did definitely enjoy the time off a little bit. Last Wednesday, I didn't know what to do with myself, so I went out to dinner. It was great, but great to be back and back at work, back at tasting wine. It's a hard job, but someone's got to taste all these wines. So, Chris, great to see you with Bonnie and Rency and Wendy and Master Scribe. I like it. Whoever's in charge with the chat room is a Master Scribe. Fabulous. Jenny and Brandon here in Norfolk. Great to have you with us. Very, very excited to be doing this class tonight. So hopefully everyone has these packets. Should come with these wine maps. I decided, because there was so much ink on these things, just to print out one for every couple of people. So you might just have to like share with a friend, but you should have wine maps right here. We will go over this. We should also have these tasting sheets. For two, you should have 2 sets. So wine 1, 2, 3, and 4 for all the red wines we're going to be tasting tonight. And just so you know, if ever you really want to attend a class but don't want to open up 4 wines, whether it's because it's just 2 people or, yes, it's Wednesday night and everyone has to wake up early and go to work or school tomorrow, you can always just open up 1 wine and then watch the recording later if you want to taste along the other wines with the recording later. So you don't have to open up all 4 wines now. Just so you know, that is always an option. So I do these on YouTube instead of Zoom, so everyone can tune in more. So a word bank basically for you to figure out what you're smelling and be able to help you name that smell. And then finally, basics of tasting. The Wine 101. We won't be going over this as much. This is more of our analytical classes that we do that are very, very tasting focused. we're going to have a little bit more fun tasting these side by side, but we're not going to go over this as much. But if you need to reference this, if you're trying to remember what is that acid test again, and what are tannins, what am I supposed to be doing here, then this is helpful for you. So, and if ever you all need PDFs of this, please let me know. I'll email them to you. They'll eventually go up on my website. I just need to get a copywriter involved and stuff. So, very excited, very, very, very excited. So hopefully you all have, if you are drinking all 4 wines tonight or tasting all 4 wines tonight, they're already open. Hopefully they had a little bit of open. If you just got home and you just ran in the door and opened the wines like I just did, the one wine that I might recommend putting through a decanter if you have it is this one. It's wine number 3 that we'll be drinking. It's the Domaine d'Auchan Moulin à Vin. So this is the one wine that if you just literally were able to open up the wines and didn't get any chance to breathe, that might be a good one to throw through a decanter. Actually, do you have a, yeah, great. Since I should take my own advice and throw that through a decanter as well. So we are going to be trying all 4 wines. We're going to be doing 2 rounds of 2. If you want to taste all 4 wines side by side, you are absolutely more than welcome. I just try and limit the classes that I do that for, because I know a lot of people don't have that many glasses and it just becomes a pain in the butt to wash them all afterwards. So you are more than welcome to do that. And we might talk about like revisiting number 1 after we've tried 3 and 4. And you can just do it one at a time as well. So whatever works best for you. I will be tasting them all 4 side by, like all 4 lined up, but we'll be talking about them in rounds of 2. So 2 wines back to back, and then another 2 wines side by side. So that's kind of what we're going for tonight. While you all get started, we're going to go ahead and start by pouring the Hirsch Cellars. That's a lovely pink label with the deer emblem, right? The antler emblem on the top. By Celine and Nicolas Hirsch. That's their last name. And it's from the Cru Chenas. So you can go ahead and pour that. That's going to be the wine on your left. So whenever you do side-by-side tastings with me, I always do left to right because we read left to right, so we want to taste left to right. So that Hirsch is going to be the wine on the left, wine number 1. And then wine number 2 is another female winemaker because it's the year of the woman. This is Nicole Chanrion. This is her wine from Côte de Bruy. So that is going to be wine number 2, or the one on the right. So go ahead and pour yourself a hefty old pour of both of those wines. If you're tasting one at a time, just start with the Hirsch, and then we can go from there. And hopefully they're at the right temperature. If you didn't get a chance to throw, if they weren't stored in a wine fridge, or if you didn't get a chance to throw them in the fridge before the class, go ahead and throw at least number 3 and 4, the last 2 reds that we'll try, in the fridge right now, just to let them cool a little bit down. These wines are best served like 60 to 65 degrees. Versus right on our counter is about 75 degrees generally. So that's a little bit too warm for these wines. Just the ever so slightest chill would be perfect. Go ahead and smell through these wines. You can start tasting through these wines. We'll taste through it as a group together in just a bit, but I want to talk about what Beaujolais is. I'm going to break down what's up with the crus of Beaujolais. Why are they special? Does it even matter? So feel free, go ahead and start sipping, totally fine. Here's the map right here. So this is the area of Beaujolais. Beaujolais is an area, and it's just south of, or the southernmost part of Burgundy. So Burgundy, France. This map has the little square where Burgundy is. So it's where it's zoomed in version. So Burgundy, the rest of Burgundy is further north, all along the river here, the Rhine River here. And Beaujolais is the southernmost region of Burgundy. Up until the 70s, it was not a part of Burgundy. It was its own separate region. So there's Burgundy and then there's Beaujolais. It was annexed by Beaujolais, and we'll talk about why and how that came to fruition in just a second. So The area of Beaujolais, unlike Burgundy, focuses on a different grape. So Burgundy, 99.9% of all the wines made from there are made either from Pinot Noir, if it's red wine, or Chardonnay, if it's white wine. There's another grape called Aligoté, and there's also some Sauvignon Blanc that is grown there, and some Gamay that's grown throughout Burgundy, but they have to be labeled as such. So if you're gonna call it a white Burgundy, it is Chardonnay. A red Burgundy, it is Pinot Noir, unless it's specifically labeled as one of the other grapes that can be grown there. But Beaujolais focuses not on Pinot Noir, but on the hybrid grape of Pinot Noir, the genetic hybrid called Gamay. So that is kind of like the flirty little sister of Pinot Noir. It's less brooding, less intense, less earthy, I'd say, generally across the board, a little bit more feminine, fruit forward, and really delightfully floral, but can also be brooding and intense. So you have some options there. But Gamay is that hybrid grape of Pinot Noir. So 99.9% of all the wines coming out of Beaujolais are from the grape Gamay. They also grow a little bit of Chardonnay here. So if you see a white Beaujolais, then it is generally speaking Chardonnay. And they can have some blends too in some areas, but they have to be labeled differently. So when you, for all intents and purposes, when you think of Beaujolais, think of the grape Gamay. Now, most people, when they think of Beaujolais, you might remember going to Thanksgiving at your grandmother's house, where there was this fruity, slightly spritzy, slightly sweet, chilled red wine that was just like chugged down by the gallon. That's called Beaujolais Nouveau, and quite a different. Yes, thank you. Pasteur Grand is the name of the wine that's blended with Gamay and Pinot Noir there. But Beaujolais Nouveau is a very specific type of wine that's coming out of the region of Beaujolais, and it is meant to be to celebrate the harvest. So it is released the third Thursday of every November, so the Thursday before Thanksgiving, literally at 12:01. They're legally allowed to start drinking. And yes, it's a legal thing. Like from the 1930s, they have laws established about when you can legally sell and thus drink these wines. So it's just a tradition in France, has nothing to do with Thanksgiving, just became associated with Thanksgiving because of the time of the year that it was released. And it's the same grape from these regions, all the same producers that are making these higher end wines make this quaffable wine to celebrate the harvest. And like one weekend a month, that weekend in November, everyone just gets drunk on Beaujolais Nouveau, has a grand old party, and then they go on about their the week after that. So they had brilliant marketing about this, and they really marketed it to the Americans starting in the 70s and on, about like being the perfect wine with Thanksgiving, and like this is the celebration wine. This is what Beaujolais is. It's like this unpretentious, really fun, easy drinking red wine. Very different than the rest of Burgundy, which was very pretentious and all about terroir focus and aging, and really intense people drink really intense Burgundies. So this was meant to be kind of the opposite style of wine and emotion about the wine, and who buys the wine, and who they are selling it to and how they are drinking it. So meant to be the opposite, but it is only a small fraction of what Beaujolais is actually producing. Georges de Boeuf is one of the most famous producers of Beaujolais Nouveau specifically. And because he was a brilliant marketer, really focused on marketing Beaujolais Nouveau to the Americans, and he was the one responsible for, in the 1970s, getting the French government to recognize Beaujolais as part of Burgundy. So it wasn't like the redheaded stepchild. It wasn't the black sheep of the family. It became more part of Burgundy. So it increased the esteem a little bit more, increased the quality perception of the wine a little bit more. But still, all of the marketing was focused on Beaujolais Nouveau. Beaujolais Nouveau is very different than what we will be drinking tonight. So if you came to this class expecting to try 4 different styles of Beaujolais Nouveau, I'm sorry, you're gonna be disappointed, or hopefully not, because these wines are fabulous. So we're gonna be trying very different wines. So real quick, what Beaujolais Nouveau is, they take the same grapes, Gamay, and they'll put them in a big, huge stainless steel tank. They put the grapes all on top of each other, weight them down, they don't press them in advance, whole cluster grapes all on top of each other. They seal it off. Well, the weight of all the grapes, because we're talking like massive, massive tanks here, the weight of all the grapes starts crushing the grapes that are on the bottom. That crushed grapes will start a fermentation process on the bottom of the tank. Fermentation 101, the yeast that's in the air will eat the sugars of the grapes, and the byproduct is not only alcohol, who gets us a little drunk, but also carbon dioxide. So that spritziness, bubbly carbon dioxide. Well, as that carbon dioxide increases as a result of this fermentation, it increases the pressure of the tank because they've sealed off the top. So it's fully enclosed. So the pressure starts increasing in the tank throughout the whole tank, which makes all of the other grape clusters start bursting on their own because of increased pressure, which starts fermentation going throughout the entire tank. So normally when you're making wine, grapes get crushed, they stay very cold for about 4 or 5 days, called cold soak or cold maceration, to extract more flavors and tannins and color and intensity from the skins of the grape. And then it goes through like a 3-week process of fermenting. That's for red wine. Carbonic maceration does the fermentation process just within that tank, just spontaneous, just whole cluster, and it happens within about 3 to 4 days. And then the juice is just pressed off, goes straight into bottle, and then it's released very shortly after. I mean, I'm talking about within weeks. This wine is not meant to be aged. If you ever get Beaujolais Nouveau around Thanksgiving time, like drink that within a couple of months, because it doesn't have the typical sulfur dioxide. It doesn't have any of the sulfites that help preserve the wine. It's meant to be consumed fresh and very, very, very young. So that's Beaujolais Nouveau, and it works great with Thanksgiving. The sweetness of it is super light and fruity. You don't get any of the harsh tannins that grape skins give the wine. You don't get intensity. You don't get high alcohol content wines, and you have this slight sweetness that makes them totally chuggable. They just literally have to celebrate the harvest of making these really amazing cru wines. So what is a cru? Cru is basically, think of Premier Cru or Grand Cru. What does that mean? It just means a designated region that has higher quality standards and practices across the board based on that geography. So if you're going to put the name of a cru on your bottle, it signifies higher quality in terms of the quality of the wine and quality control of how the wine is made, and more rules associated with how the wine is made. So within Beaujolais, you have 10 crus. They're all surrounding 10 unique villages. So the crus are named after the local village, and each cru has very distinct terroir. Now remember, terroir is that hard to define French term that basically just means sense of place. So me, right now, here in Suffolk, Virginia, at my parents' house, I've got these crazy bright fluorescent lights shining in my face. There is a hard wooden chair underneath me, cold tile floor underneath. The window is slightly open, so I'm getting a little bit of a breeze here. This is my sense of place. This is how I feel this sense of place. Well, just across the table where Sam Mom is sitting, hi Sam Mom, she is sitting, the fluorescent lights aren't shining directly on her. She may not get the same breeze that I'm getting. She has similar in terms of like the chair and the table and the floor, but everything else is slightly different. So her sense of place is slightly different. Well, vines operate the same way. They feel these slight differences very, very intensely. So it makes a little bit different of soil type, or maybe the slope of the hill, or maybe how they're faced, or maybe the closeness to a forest or a river. All of these things that make that one vineyard slightly different than another vineyard. That is the definition of terroir. So Hello, Ethel. Great to see you. So glad to see everybody. So that's the definition of terroir. So each of these villages has slightly different terroir, which means their wines are going to taste differently. I think every single wine that we're tasting here today is made almost the exact same way. 100% Gamay grapes, partially made in whole cluster fermentation style, aged in large oak foudre. The big difference is the terroir, and they're all we've got 2018 and 2019. Yeah, we've got 3 2019s and 1 2018. So the big difference, though, is the sense of terroir that each village has. So we're going to try 4 of the 10 crus of Beaujolais. And real quick, I know I can't hear you, but I need everyone to say this with me. So tune in now. If there's one thing you learned from this class, it is how to correctly pronounce Beaujolais. So it is not Beaujolais, although bougie people can drink Beaujolais, but it is Beaujolais. So I'm going to give you all the street cred of having one-on-one sessions, wine sessions with a sommelier. It is pronounced Beaujolais. So say it to yourself if you're by yourself. Say it to your table mates if you're tasting with other people. Pronounce after me, Beaujolais. Say it, preach it, and tell all of your friends how to correctly pronounce Beaujolais. If anyone ever talks about Beaujolais, I generally always think like they're probably talking about Beaujolais Nouveau, because the type, like, that's just associated with the misunderstanding of what Beaujolais truly is. So now you all know Beaujolais. Fabulous. And if you want to be super cool, you just call it Beaujolais instead of Beaujolais. So forget all the rest. All the cool kids on the Somme block are calling it Beaujolais these days. So Beaujolais is where it's at, and we are going to fall in love with some Beaujolais tonight in this class. So hopefully that all made sense. If anything needs to be repeated about what Beaujolais is and why it's different than Burgundy, and why it is not all Beaujolais Nouveau. Nouveau just means new, so the new harvest. Then please let me know if I need to clarify anything. But we are going to get into the tasting of 4 of the 10 crus of Beaujolais. So on your left, Chenas. So Chenas is the name of this cru. And just so you know, anytime you get a cru Beaujolais, you won't see on the front label, generally speaking, it won't say cru Beaujolais. It won't even be labeled as Beaujolais, because they are the only people that are allowed to be labeled as just the name of the cru themselves. They don't have to put Beaujolais on there. But it will be in the Beaujolais section of a wine store, or I will tell you that it is a Beaujolais. And it might be on the back, although this one isn't. So don't look for the word Beaujolais on cru Beaujolais wines. You won't see that. There's also something called Beaujolais Village. So we have, let's see, sorry, let me turn down my my volume here. There. Beaujolais Nouveau, we all talked about what that is and how that's made and how it's so different. Then you just have what's called Beaujolais. So this entire area, this entire orange area, including all of the regions of the 10 crus, you can make wine if the grapes come from that area, and you can just call it Beaujolais. It's not going to be the super carbonic, spritzy, slightly sweet style of Beaujolais Nouveau, although you can get Beaujolais Nouveau. You can make that from grapes coming from anywhere within that larger region. But if it's labeled as Beaujolais instead of Beaujolais Nouveau, generally means it could age for, 1 to 3 years instead of needing to be consumed kind of like within a couple of months. A little bit more serious, but definitely like 10 and under kind of style of price points of the wine. Beaujolais Village is that next step up, the next step up. So not quite cru quality, but Beaujolais Village, it looks like villages, right? Is the next step up in terms of quality standards. So if I'm going to make a wine, I'm going to call it Beaujolais Village. There's a restriction on how much I can make, how I have to make it, and what it should taste like to make sure that Beaujolais Grenache is truly a higher quality than just regular Beaujolais, and definitely higher quality than Beaujolais Nouveau. Then finally, you have Cru Beaujolais, which are the wines that we're going to be trying tonight. So on the left, we have the Hirsch. On the right, we have the Chandrillon, Côte de Brouilly. That just means the slopes or the hills of Brouilly. So Brouilly is a little bit of a larger region, and Côte de Brouilly is slightly smaller. Here is where we are tasting. Chenas, right here, almost furthest north of everything here. That darker orange section right below Julianas and Saint-Amour. So this is considered northern part of Beaujolais. Pretty small and considered like the rarest finds of Cru Beaujolais. They don't make as much wine as the rest of the crus, and they're more difficult to find. I know this because you have to hunt when you're trying to find wines from Chenas. So further down south in this like more teal area, the whole area that encompasses it is Brouilly, and it's almost entirely surrounding the area of Côte de Brouilly. So I wanted to print this topographical map so you can see that the Côte de Brouilly does have some of that topography, some of that indication that there are slopes here, higher elevation vineyards. Right within the middle of Brouilly, you have higher elevation vineyards, so they actually got designated as their own separate cru, because even though it's fully surrounded by Brouilly, it has different terroir because of that higher elevation. So that's what we're drinking on the left here. Let's just talk about what we're smelling in these wines. If you want to go back and forth to the different two. So on the left, the Chenas, and on the right, that Côte de Brouilly. Wow. Anything that y'all are smelling, go ahead and type it in the chat room. Sorry, I just got lost for a couple seconds there smelling these really, really gorgeous wines. And while y'all are typing away your thoughts on what you're smelling on either of these wines, just make sure you specify which one it is. You can either say number 1, or you can call it the Chenas, or number 2, call it the Côte de Brouilly, or the CDB. Two female winemakers here, both tiny estates. So Celine Hirsch, she only has 4 hectares. That's less than 10 total acres. That is a tiny, tiny, tiny estate. Her and her husband, so Celine and Nicolas, born and raised in Alsace, France, right on the corner of the border of France and Germany. They met, fell in love, and decided to actually move to Beaujolais and start making wine there. So very, very, very small production wine. This is on my current wine features. So if you fall in love with it now, don't worry. It's not going anywhere. At least for like a month and a half, I'll have this wine. But they don't make a lot, so it's not going to hang around too long. Chenas is known specifically for having a lot more quartz in the soils. So you have granite soils throughout all of Beaujolais, but minute differences. So you have quartz, and for this particular vineyard spot, it's all broken down really intensely, so it's sandy. So you have a lot of quartz in the sand, and then crumbly granite throughout. So it allows for exceptional drainage. Higher up, so the vineyards are a little bit cooler than the vineyards further to the south. So you have this like beautiful, elegant, and feminine style of Beaujolais, or of Gamay, Beaujolais the region, Gamay the grape. And it's quite distinct. So every time I've had a Chenas, they've just been like delightfully floral, delightfully feminine, softer, like the perfect romantic wine for sure. So that's kind of what Chenas is known for. So Chris Nelson says number 1 has some cherry, tobacco, and fresh raspberry. I love that. All of these like red fruits in there, and yeah, there is this hint of the like herbaceous tobacco, kind of pipe tobacco going on. So Dominica says strawberry, yes, rhubarb, and a bit of vanilla. Cool. So we're getting these red fruited things, getting some bitter notes, whether it's rhubarb or tobacco, a little bit of that spice component, and that's coming from the old wood that this is Asian. All of these wines are aged in pretty old wood. If there's any newer oak that the wine was aged in. It's like a very small percentage. And usually the barrels are very large here. So we're not trying to get oaky wine when we're drinking Cru Beaujolais. It is definitely about the expression of the fruit, the expression of the terroir without the oak overcoming it, because Gamay is such a delicate grape to begin with. So, all right, so Tawana says, wine number 1, getting a lot of toasted wood, maybe pine or oak. Not great at the different oaks. Nobody is really good at that. So don't worry about trying to figure out the different type of wood. It's all about how they actually toast it. So don't worry. Cooked cherries. Okay, so that red fruit and that hint of that spice component, that bitter component, that oaky component. So nice call on the vanilla. Great. Let's see, Tawana says, wine number 2, cooked raspberry, not in jam, but more like a pie. Okay. Yeah, a little bit deeper aromatics and deeper fruit notes on wine number 2, a little bit darker too, versus like the super bright red fruit of wine number 1. So Chris says, number 2, dark chocolate covered cherries. Yeah, that darker style, a little bit more sultry style, less of this feminine, bright, flirty fun like the Chenas had. So Jen says, all the crunchy red fruit on both of them. Awesome. Cherry, cranberry, and strawberry. Yes, the Chenas has a more earthy thing going on as well for me. So fabulous. So, and then Jen says, another Jen, sorry, wine number 2 has minerality to it. Awesome. So let's get into tasting. I know you already are tasting, but we'll get into talking about tasting together. No need to wait on these times. I know 2020 means that it's like impossible to wait to start drinking, I feel like. Ethel says, number 1, definitely an oak or an earthy note. All right, awesome. So definitely should, all of these wines should be a little bit more terroir focused. So Mom, what do you smell? And any one of these jump out to you?
Definitely got the reds on the 1, but also got some smoky little clove.
On number 1?
On number 1.
All right, so Mom says that she got a lot of the red fruit on number 1, but also gets a smoky component and a clove component. So
the tobacco.
Goes great with that tobacco, that vanilla, that oak, that earthy component that other of you were talking about. So fabulous. Anything on number 2?
Yeah, licorice, rhubarb. And more minerality.
Great.
On number 2.
Great. So we're all echoing here. So she says same, a lot of the fruits too, but a little bit more licorice and rhubarb. So that darker, more like pungent flavor profile and deeper minerality as well. So fabulous. So whenever you get to try 2 wines side by side, if you've got 2 glasses in front of you, I like to go back and forth. So the first sip, I'll just take a first sip and kind of get that first impressions of the wine, figure out like, does this wine match up to what I was smelling of the wine? And then just, a couple seconds later, go to the second one. After you get those first impressions out of the way, I'm going to go delve deeper, full gulps, swish the wine around in your mouth. Make sure you're slurping it. Yes, make that much noise. Slurp in some air, oxidate the wine a little bit, let it open up in your mouth, and then see how your impressions of the wine change as a result of that. So let's see. Oh, it's just so lovely. It's just so lovely. That's my first impression of the Chenas. Tart, bright, lovely, feminine, easy. Try one number 2. Ooh, definitely darker. Definitely kind of like grips your tongue a little bit more, just that first impression. But still lovely wine. Both of these are still, for all intents and purposes, feminine, soft wines. So let's try doing a bigger gulp, slurping it around, swishing around in the mouth, and see if the wines open up a little bit and talk to me a little bit more. So going back to wine number 1, the Hirsch Chenas. So for those of you who are not having the wines in front of you, if you can read that label right here, Hirsch Chenas, 2019 vintage by Nicola Hirsch. Definitely opens up a lot more. All that minerality, kind of like, I generally, whenever I get graphite or granite soil types, I get this like graphite pencil shavings kind of minerality in the wines. I'm definitely getting that. That opens up a lot more. All the floral notes are coming out to me a little bit more now, and definitely more intense strawberry than I was getting on the nose, like on the palate. That's how the wine is opening up to me. Everyone kind of experiences the wine differently, but that's how that Chenasse opened up to me. So going to try the Côte de Brouilly now, which already is changing quite a bit in the glass and getting a little bit more brooding, a little bit more this girl turned into a teenager and she's got a mood swing kind of thing going on. Let's try. Yeah, cocoa powder and black cherries are kind of more predominant on the nose. On the palate, and it's kind of gripping me a little bit more of this like forest floor going on versus this like bright herbaceous quality that the Chenasse had. Both really, really beautiful, beautiful wines here. So let me get to some of the questions that y'all have here. Chris says, does wine number 2 have, I hope I say this right, have that rim variation? Great, a much lighter colored, clearer ring on the outside. So let's talk about rim variation. So when you look at color of the wine, you don't actually want to hold up to the light or hold up to the room. That's how you look for clarity, and then kind of swirl it with the light source in the background. That's how you're going to find those legs in the wine. But color, you want to specifically hold the glass on its side and look straight down through the wine. Let's do that for both of these here. We've got very unfiltered wine too, by the way. We're doing only natural wine making styles for all 4 of these wines. And so you're going to have a little bit of cloudiness to all of these wines. But Gamay is a thin-skinned grape, so you should be easily able to read through all of these wines that we're going to try tonight. So on the left here, I definitely get a little bit more of that pink fuchsia magenta rim rather than a deep red or deep purple. I still have some of that on wine number 2, but it's a little bit more red than fuchsia. And yes, you have a much lighter rim than in the middle. Rim variation specifically, though, means more a change in the color. So going to the browner side towards the rim. So that's an indication of age of the wine. Now, if you're getting any brown tinge coloring on that wine, and you do get that, chances are the bottle might be bad. Maybe the cork let too much oxygen into the wine or something like that. But yes, you definitely get this like lighter, paler color. And really young wine, that meniscus, that rim around the edge of the wine as it hits the glass will be the color of water. So super, super clear. As wine ages, that meniscus will change even to that browner coloring, and you'll have that distinct color variation. So that's what rim variation is. So great question about rim variation. Without seeing your specific glass, I'm not exactly sure, but if you're not getting any brown coloring, then the rim variation, that change in consistency, is literally just concentration of the wine without it being necessarily a rim variation, if that makes sense. So great question, though. All right, another question here. I'm eating cheese and grapes right now. Fabulous. That is the best life, to drink wine and to eat cheese and grapes. Fabulous. Dominica says, is aging any of the Cru Gamay wines recommended? Boy, yes, it is. Definitely not Beaujolais Nouveau. Not really recommended for Beaujolais. Beaujolais Village, both of those wines you want to drink like within 1 to max 3 years, kind of aging on those. But Cru Beaujolais can be aged for the best ones for decades. But a lot of these, I think, will could stand to age for another 5 years, easy. They're so delicious right now. I would find it very difficult to wait, but they are absolutely possible to age, unlike the lower tier qualities of the rest of Beaujolais. So do not think Beaujolais and think that you have to drink it right away. I know we're drinking really young wines, but these wines could stand to age for sure. So great question. All right, awesome. So let's get into a little bit more. So we talked about the Chenasse, that quartzy, sandy, granitic soils. In Côte de Brie, you do have higher elevation, and because it is further south, it is warmer, so you get more ripeness of fruit. So you get a little bit closer, a little bit more sunlight hours per day, a little bit warmer climate, so much more ripeness of fruit. We were getting that in the wine too, that deeper, denser quality of fruit. Still elegant. I kind of wanted to feature the two, what I thought was going to be the two most elegant styles side by side, and then we're going to get into the two more masculine styles, a little bit more intense brooding styles side by side. So, by the way, Nicole Chamarion, she's part of the 6th generation winemaking family. She literally grew up in the vineyards. I'm talking like learned to walk in the vineyards and helped her father out in the vineyards. She was kind of the first female of all 6 generations to take over. She, in 2000, was named the president of Côte de Brie. So it's like basically like the village mayor, and has done a whole lot to increase the quality of Côte de Brie, the marketing of Côte de Brie, the marketing of Cru Beaujolais, and the standards set for what the really, really good wine should taste like. So she's locally known as the boss of the Côte there. So really famous producers outside of these like epic producers. So it's really amazing to try these side by side, and I'm very, very happy to have the opportunity to do that with you all tonight. So alcohol percentage of the first 2 wines, great question. So wine number 1, we're 12.5%. So the Hirsch from Chenasse, 12.5% alcohol. The Chamarion, 14.5, baby. That is not a subtle wine alcohol percentage. 14.5 is pretty high, especially for Gamay, but that is honestly what we're getting these days in terms of everywhere just having warmer vintages. So you get riper fruit, and riper fruit makes higher alcohol content wines. So all right, any thoughts on these 2 wines side by side? Difference of fruit, do you have an overall preference? If you were to drink 1 glass of 1 or number 2, what would you drink? And maybe what you would pair it with. I found out that the Hirsch Chenasse tastes really good at about 9:30 in the morning. That was my take on the wine. I thought it was really delicious after morning coffee. Not that I do that on a regular basis, but there was a little bit that I needed to taste and write a review on. So I had some, and I was like, this is perfect morning wine. So that's the Hirsch Chenasse. That Côte de Brie, I can see pairing it with like duck confit, whether that's on a sandwich with some mushrooms and some goat cheese, or maybe in some risotto would be really, really delicious. But Chenasse to me is the softest style and really, truly just like elegant, silky wine. So it doesn't necessarily beg for specific foods as much as some of these other ones might. So let's hear. Rick says the Côte de Brie seems longer in the mouth and maybe a bit more complex. I would agree. Yes, those tannins are a little bit more intense. It has a deeper, earthier quality to it, so it has a little bit more structure and definition around the wine, which means to me, I just want to enjoy that with food more than the Chenasse. I would just really, really enjoy by the glass, in a very large glass. Chris Nelson says the votes, number 1 got 2 legs, number 2 got 3 legs. All right, cool. So we're almost half and half leaning towards the Côte de Brie. Fabulous. We move the number 1 legs to another table. Okay, I like it. So Bonnie, I'm curious, because I know you love the Chenasse so much and you've had that a couple of times now, trying it again side by side with another Gamay, did it change your mind about the Chenasse, or are you part of the group that liked the Chenasse the most? I am curious. Always when I try a wine that I know well, that I've had several times or even just a couple of times before, but I try it in a different scenario, like side by side with another wine from the same region or another vintage or a different type of food, it often changes my mind so drastically about how I experienced that wine and what I thought, that it is curious. So anybody different food pairing thoughts about either number 1 from Chenas or the second from Côte de Brouilly? Let me know what you would drink these with. I'm going to try these again. So overall, I think that y'all were saying that the complexity level was a little bit higher on the Côte de Brouilly. What about the finish? Did you find that one of them had a longer finish? And I don't mean weight in your mouth. I don't mean like how heavy the wine sat on your mouth. I'm talking about how long did you continue tasting that wine after you swallowed. So let's see. Chenas is just like silk. It's just creamier. The finish doesn't linger super long in my mouth, but it's a very clean finish. It's nice, round, soft, silky finish. Let's see. Yeah, not only is the body of the Côte de Brouilly a little bit more rich, I think the finish is a little bit longer on these. Both of them are super, super delicious though. So Ethel says, number 2, fine for me, or for me with the Brie, fabulous. Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think Brie would be a perfect choice. Did you think any of them worked good with the cheeses?
Yeah, the fig with the Dubliner
Awesome.
fig jam.
So someone over here is trying the Côte de Brouilly with some Dubliner cheese, Irish Dubliner cheese, and a little bit of fig jam, and that worked perfectly, and it worked better than the Chenas. I would agree. I think the acid and tannins are a little bit more intense on the Côte de Brouilly, which allows for a little bit more possibility for more wine pairings. So going back here, Chris Nelson says, Bonnie and Renzi, number 1. Awesome. They shouted from the new table in the kitchen. Okay, like it. Y'all literally did separate them. It's hysterical. Rick says, agree. Chenas by itself, maybe it was something very light, but not much, or much prefer the CDB or the Côte de Brouilly. See, the Côte de Brouilly is longer in the mouth and longer finish. Awesome. See, more people are tuning in. Cool. Rick also says, I'd like roasted chicken, maybe even cold on a picnic table. Yes, this is the season for like the best picnics, right? You're not going to be so hot that you're just like sweating through your clothes. This is the season of Beaujolais for a reason. It's not so cold that you need something to warm you up on the inside. So a red wine like this with a slight chill on it is perfect. The fall is one of my least favorite seasons, just because it means winter is coming, and winter is absolutely my least favorite season. But it allows for me to drink the wines I really want to drink with a little bit more pleasure. So for that reason, I like fall. Dominica, I don't like this choosing drill. Yes, it's so true. Like, why would we need to choose? Just have both. The Chenas during the week and the Côte de Brouilly on the weekend. All right, cool. Tawana says with grilled salmon. Yes. So don't think red wine has to be served with red meat. So grilled chicken, like we talked about for the picnic, or grilled salmon. Beaujolais are classically known for their ability to pair with fish, even, and lighter meats and lighter and proteins. So absolutely do not think that you cannot serve red wine with fish, especially salmon. Delightful. Yeah, a little char on it would be amazing. So let's see. Someone keep an eye out for Dalmatian fig spread in stores around here. Okay.
Homemade fig jam. A friend gave me.
She says she has homemade fig jam, but she'll keep an eye out for it when the homemade jam runs out. So, yeah. Yes.
Our conclusions were exactly opposite from this color coding on your map.
Okay, great. So let's see here. So someone pointed out that there is color coding on the map
that shows the Chenin region would be the light body, and the Chenin and the
Chenas.
Chenin region, and the Côte de Brie would be the Côte de Brie would be the light-bodied.
Gotcha. Yeah. So great question. So someone pointed out that there is color coding, and man, I did not. I can't even read this, so I did not pick up on that. So the teal regions were a little bit more lighter bodied. Versus the orange regions were a little bit more bolder and weightier. And we had the opposite reaction. The Chenas for us was much softer style, and the Côte de Brie was a little bit more bolder and intense. So that all goes to show you how variable the wine world is. So you could try 3,000 wines from the same region, and all of them are going to have 3,000 different flavor profiles. Some are going to be lighter bodied, some are going to be fuller bodied. So I think for the most part, Chenas is probably maybe known for bolder style, and Côte de Brie is known for lighter style. That might be by and large the most part. Honestly, you ask 12 wine writers, though, their thoughts on the classic personality differences between all these crews, and you're also going to get individual responses from each different person. So to me, my experience does not actually line up with this map. My experience and tasting a lot of Beaujolais for a few years now lines up with our tasting notes. Chenas to me has always been super elegant and silky and softer style in terms of structure, and the Côte de Brie has been a little bit more structured. That's just me. Obviously, Wine Folly, they have published books and a lot more experience and a team of people making these wines. So it's okay to disagree with people. You can disagree with me. I can disagree with this map, and that's totally fine. None of that is necessarily wrong. That we got a fuller bodied wine in the Côte de Brie when a map told us we might get a softer wine. So trust your own palate, and don't be afraid if your tasting notes are different than mine or different than any other experts. So Chris Nelson says, number 2 with peppered salami, the bomb. Awesome. Definitely a pairing type wine. Wonderful. So, and Ethel, the Chenas is good with the leftover crab cake. Yeah, so you could do seafood with red wine. Absolutely. Rick Morrison asks, is the Chenas filtered? So none of these wines are filtered, actually. Not a single one of the 4 wines we're trying today are filtered. I can tell that the Côte de Brie had a little bit more intense racking before they in the traditional sense. So great questions and discussion on these first 2 wines. We're going to jump into the next 2 wines and keep those questions coming. The discussion to me is like my favorite part about these classes, and answering the questions that I haven't thought about and obviously didn't see. I do not have eyes good enough to read that map. So so on the left we are going to do the Moulin Avant, not Moulin Rouge, Moulin Avant. So, or Moulin Avant, if you want to say it truly American. And that's by Domaine d'Auchan. So this is the one that I said that if you had a chance to decant it, if you had just opened it up, like right at 7 o'clock or right before the class, and that would be the wine that I'd recommend decanting. This is their cuvée, which just means blend. It's not a blend of grapes. It's just the blend of specific vineyard plots. Vieilles Vignes, which means old vines. So in France, there's also not any specific designation about what old vines or Vieilles Vignes means. You don't have to have vines at a certain age to put that on your label. Generally, in France, though, 35 years old is kind of the minimum that your vine age needs to be. Technically, anything over 20 years is considered old in vines, which is absurd. 35 years is definitely considered more like classic old vines. 50 years old is considered ancient, which is terrible. And over 75 years is considered centennial, because chances are, if the vine is 75 years old, it has seen the passage of the turn of a century. But there is no legal definition of these things. The great thing is, even though their scale is very young in terms of what they consider old, it's really talking about higher quality wines. So the older the vines, generally speaking, the higher quality of the wine. So that's the positive thing in all of this. So the Domaine d'Auchan Moulin Avant is going to be the glass on your left. I've got mine in a decanter here because I got here too late to open these wines up in advance. And then on the right, we are going to have this Bourgogne with this funky little topographical map here of the 3 vineyard sites that this is a blend of by Descombe, by KK Descombe, as he is locally known. So that is on the right. The Moulin Avant is on the right. So while y'all start smelling these, just swirl them, check out those colors, check out the difference in the legs. If you see a big difference in the legs, get your noses in there and really smell these wines. So we're jumping up, like those were, the last 2 wines were like super, super delicious every day, Beaujolais. We're jumping a little bit in terms of ageability, in terms of structure, and in terms of quality on both of these wines. So back to the map here. So Moulin Avant is just south of Chenas. So just south of that. So technically speaking, should be that bigger style. And Moulin Avant is definitely known for being the rustic, masculine, grippy, more muscular style of Gamay. And I have absolutely seen that to be the case. I've never had a Moulin Avant that wasn't like a little bit more rough around the edges. Not quite like neck tattoos, but still a little bit rough around the edges. Maybe some piercings, you know. And then finally, we have the Morgon, which is right in the center of the cruise here. One of the larger regions, actually. And I'd say it'd be like Moulin Avant's younger brother. So typically speaking, now I find that this Morgon is really intense and really bold and really out there. But typically speaking, Morgons are slightly softer than the Moulin Avant. So we're going to see, and we're going to taste these side by side. All of these wines I've had before, I've never had them side by side. So the progression is kind of an experiment. And we'll see if I've changed my mind on how I thought that these wines should have been served. So as you're tasting these, Domaine d'Auchan is this wine right here, is literally like one of the top producers for Moulin Avant. So if you read any wine book and they talk about Cru Beaujolais, and if they talk about Moulin Avant and they mention any producer, they're going to talk about Domaine d'Auchan. So definitely one of the most classic producers. It's imported by Kermit Lynch. So we've talked about Kermit Lynch in a couple other classes before. Really big name in terms of wine importing. And he has worked with terroir-focused boutique producers, focusing on France since the 70s. He had a little wine shop in California in the 70s and then just decided like, he wasn't finding the wines he wanted, so he decided to go out and meet the producers and import them himself. So their vines, it says Via Vine, and remember how we talked about there's no legal definition, but these vines are about 85 years old. So definitely older vines here and really, really stunning wines. So the Descombe Morgon wine on the right, his name is Kewin, K-E-W-I-N, Descombe. His father, Georges Descombe, is literally just like d'Auchan, one of the producers that anyone who writes about Beaujolais is going to mention. So he grew up in this very, very iconic making family. And his first vintage of wine, his first solo vintage of wine, he was 21 years old. That was just 7 years ago. So he's now 28. Which is a little young for me, but I looked it up and he's quite handsome. So if anyone wants to reach out to him on social media and tell him that there's a sommelier in Virginia who would love to marry him just so she can drink his wines for the rest of her life, that would be awesome. Do a little matchmaking work for me. 7 years into this business, and he's still in his 20s. makes his wine a little bit different style than his father. His father makes a very, very classic, kind of austere wines. And Kuin has been a little bit more playful in his ideas of how the wines are made and the flavor profiles that they should talk about. Very tiny production, 1.6 hectares. So that would be like less than 4 acres of vineyard here in the Morgon region. He has another cuvee label, which is called his Vieille Vigne. It was too expensive, unfortunately, to feature in this class and keep the price at here, but it was like mind-blowing, stunning wine. So if you ever see Descombe, they call it KK, he has his Beaujolais Village, then he has this Morgon Cru Beaujolais, and then he has his Vieille Vigne, his old vines, Morgon. Gorgeous wines, highly, highly recommend trying them out if you can ever find them. But with that small production, they are definitely difficult to find. So that's what we're drinking. So what's in our glass. Let's get our noses in those glasses and see. Whew, man, I'm glad I decanted that Diochon. If you didn't decant, maybe you just open it up an hour before the class. Swirl that baby in that glass. Get that Diochon, that Moulin Avant. Get some air into that. Even like blow into the glass a little bit. Kind of get that intensity to flow off a little bit. All right. Definitely darker fruit, more brooding. Let's get our noses in the Descombe. Whoo, we got some funk in that Descombe. Yeah, that's a little bit more horsey, a little bit more barnyard. Not like full-on barnyard, not like horse shit. It's just like you walked past a farm and it was kind of blowing off in the air. And all like the almost like rotting flowers and like the skins of the grape, everything kind of like drying out on leather. Definitely different. Man, all 4 of these wines have been so unique and different. Almost that Moulin Avant now going back. Whenever I get to try wines like this side by side, it's always such a treat because I want to go back and forth and back and forth. So after I've smelled both of them, I'll go back to the first one and see how changing of the progression of the arrangement, the manner in which I smell them changes what I'm getting in the wine. So, all right. Tawana says, we got you. So you're gonna play the matchmaker. Awesome. Anyone who can land me a date with him. I don't even know if he's married or not. Not if he's married, definitely. But anyone who can land me a date with Kuin Descombe, free 6-pack of Beaujolais for you. Rick Morrison says, Moulin Avant, minerality and burnt wood. Yes, so much more woodsy notes in that Moulin Avant. I think there's definitely more. I think it's about 30% new oak on these wines. Still large oak casks. We're talking like 400 liters. I'm sorry, like 400, 4 hectoliters, so 4,000 liter barrels. So larger barrels. You're not going to get a lot of intensity of oak flavor, but definitely this wine has more of that because 30% of the wine was aged in newer. I really struggled thinking in advance about the progression, knowing that the Moulin Avant was so much more woodsy, so much more, a little bit more tannic and rustic. I thought about serving it after the Descombe, but I really wanted the funk of the Descombe to kind of like be the highlight and not be drowned out. So we'll see. Let's try it out. Trying now the Moulin Avant. And tell me what you're smelling and tasting these wines as you get into them. First impression sip, deep cherry, loads of minerality, a little bit of this like gamey quality too, a little bit like this iron to the finish or rust quality, as I'd say. Much more tannins, like grippy tannins on that Moulin Avant. A little bit more masculine, rustic style Gamay for sure. Wildly different than the first two. We're gone. Ooh, First impressions, all that funk is on the nose, but it's so sultry on the palate and got all these like plum qualities to me. And that's just first impressions. These first impressions were wildly loud. Sometimes first impressions are very quiet to me on wines, especially Gamay. Not these two. So let's do a little bit more swish and swirl. See what else we can get out of it. Oh man, you swish and swirl that Milan and wine. It's a wine that could age for easy 5 to 7 years. So you're talking about ageable Beaujolais. The acid is high. My mouth is watering. The tannins are firm and grippy and kind of that rustic, not super fine, soft tannins like or silky. Rustic tannins. The structure is perfect on that wine for it to age quite a bit. Can be a little bit harder to drink young, these wines. But if you find that Beaujolais is a little too soft for your palate, your sensibilities, then this is the kind of Beaujolais you might like to drink even if it's young. So totally preferential there on that one. I think the complexity of the wine and the integration of the wine will come together. I want to see this wine in 3 to 5 years. To me right now, it's a little bit too like angular, a little bit too, the structure overpowers the complexity of the wine. So I want to see it integrate a little bit more, come together, and find some balance. And I think that will happen with a couple years age on it. So let's try out this Morgon. This is the one 2018 vintage. Everything else is 2019 that we're trying. So we've got 1 year on it. Let's see here. So perfumed now, like all of that funk is still there, but all of these flowers like geraniums and violets and rose petals, like chocolate covered rose petals, bitter chocolate. Let's see. Nope, not spin that. That is super, super delicious. Wow. Have you ever, you go to these like cocktail bars now that, you know, it takes like 20 minutes to get a cocktail, but it took them 20 minutes to build that cocktail. Using rose water tincture is really popular these days to make cocktails with. And I definitely get that like rose water tincture, rose petal tea, that like bitter quality of the tea, that intensity with this like perfumed aromatic quite a bit. It's like eating a rose. Got that bitterness, a little bit of those phenolics, but with all of those florals too. So wildly different wines. We could not have picked 4 more different Beaujolais, I think, to try out for this. So I'm so glad they highlighted, hopefully, the difference that Gamay can have. So let's see your thoughts. Rick says, Milan Avant, minerality and burnt wood. Awesome, yes. And the Morgon is barnyard and leather. Yes, all that leather, baby. Chris Nelson says, Hammock and I sense the funk and we're loving it, even if it isn't full on. Yes, which I gotta say, so Chris, you have done this like 180-degree turn from when you first started attending the classes and you're like, I do not like Brettanomyces. I hate everyone that has any hint of that barnyard funk, that Brettanomyces. And I gotta say, the last 3 wines that you've had that had some Brettanomyces you've enjoyed. So it's really fun to see people's palates change. This is the highlight of my job when I get to be a part of the whole journey of someone's expanding their palate and changing the wines that they like and enjoy and appreciate. So that is a super treat for me to hear that. All right, so we'll take 2 bottles, please. Done. Great. Got it. Ethel says, very, very dark fruit, black currant. And Ethel, which wine were you talking about when you were talking about the dark fruit and black currant? Just tell me if it was the Milan Avant, the MV, or just the M, the Morgon, if you want to use simple things. So, or wine 3 and 4. Joanna says, wine 3 smelled like all the beginning of class and initially got strawberry jam. Okay, fabulous. Going back now, I'm getting a lot more of the wood and dried fruits. Fabulous. So as wines open up, just even in the glass, like even if I were to, this only has about, 2.5 ounces or so. If I were to drink it down to halfway through and then top off my glass from the decanter, it would again change the nose of the wine. So wines just change sometimes very quickly in the glass. Sometimes it's scary when they change too quickly. Sometimes very slowly. And it's always about going on that journey and having that conversation with the wine as it's continuing to change. I love when wines do that. And you just like want to keep smelling it because it keeps changing, keeps developing, keeps having a different thing to say. So let's see here. Got jam only on number 3 initially. Yeah, and then it all changed. You got all those woodsy notes. Great. Dominica says, does acidity or tannins change with aging? Fabulous question. Yes, they change in structure. So they're literally acid compounds and tannin compounds, phenolic compounds in the wine. The actual amount of those compounds won't change, but the structure of those chemical compounds change. So acidity softens, but not as intense as the difference of tannins as they soften and change. So tannins, it's a long chain polymer. We're going to get into a little bit of chemistry here. And those are all bound up, these tannins. And so imagine a hectagon. So it has all of these edges to it. When these phenolic compounds, these tannins, are really young, they exist singularly or individually because they have an ionic charge, and so they're going to repel against each other, which means that they're going to want to bind to your mouth as soon as you put them in. They want to bind to whatever moisture they find around, which is always in your gums and in your cheeks. That's why really young tannic wines, they bind to you. Now, if you eat some fatty food, those individual compounds are going to bind to that fatty food. So that's why tannic wine goes so well with fattier steak, because those tannins bind to the food instead of your gums, so it softens the wine. Now, as the wine ages, those tannins lose their charge. So instead of repelling against each other, they're like, all right, I'll be friends with my other friend tannin over here and my other friend tannin over here. And they form eventually these long chains. So they stop becoming individual compounds and start forming these long chains as they lose their charge and like, all right, we're getting old. We might as well like become friends and hang out here together. Well, as they bind together and lose their charge, they become heavier. So they lose their ability to be suspended in the liquid of the wine, and they sink to the bottom of the wine, and they absorb color or the pigment of the wine. So if you've ever opened up an old wine and seen a bunch of sediment in the glass, that is literally tannic compounds that have formed these long chains that have eventually settled, absorbed pigment, and become sediment in your glass. Now, there's also sediment in young wine. That's just unfiltered wine. But old wine, even if it's filtered, will have sediment, and that's what it is, especially red wine. Those tannins, because they're hectagons, basically, as they link up, there's just less surface area for them to bind to anything. So those tannins soften over age because you just have less of the surface tension to get bound to your gums, or bound to your food. So all of those tannins soften their textural feel in your mouth over time just because they lose their charge and link up and become friends with one another. So that's my chemistry lesson of tannins and how they change with age. So my mom, by the way, is the chemistry teacher. So she taught chemistry for years. I had to get tutoring through high school just to get through chemistry classes, nothing connected to my head because I couldn't understand the practical application. So for years, I felt terrible that I did not get the science gene that my mom had, or the math gene. My dad was a calculus teacher for years. But as I get more into wine and I have a practical application of chemistry, I've gotten so interested in it. So anytime I start talking chemistry, I see my mom's face, like, what? Where did my daughter Kira go? What is she doing talking about chemistry? It's
You just explained precipitation reaction. You didn't know it.
Oh,
that's what you just did.
So my mom says that what I just explained is called precipitation reaction. Now I have a new term to use about that. I will do a little bit more research and tell you about it. But precipitation reaction, that's the fallout of these long chain polymers, so called tannins. Sorry, I don't think you wanted that long of an answer about tannins, but I am always happy to nerd out with y'all. So let's see, other questions and comments here. Tawana says, wine number 4, definitely giving the barnyard with some herbs hiding it behind the red fruits and funk. I'm gonna get back to this wine soon and hopefully find those herbs too. I converted to the Church of Britannomyces. I love it. Yes, I am so glad to be a fellow church member with you, Chris, of the Church of Britannomyces. Ryan says, as always, super interested in all of these wines. Yes, I am days away from a shipping license, so super excited to be announcing that and the details of that shortly. Ethel says, Milan Avant got some black currant. Okay, so that was the one you were talking about. Yes, I think there's all these like black fruits on that Milan Avant. So thank you for clarifying there. Rick says, is the barnyard saddle leather always an indication of Brett? Yes. Yes. Now, woodsy note or even leathery notes, not necessarily Britannomyces. But as soon as you get the barnyard specifically, where it's borderline on that like sweaty leather or that manure quality, that is definitely always Britannomyces. Now, there are thousands of strains of Britannomyces, so each one is going to affect the aromatic or taste profile slightly differently than others. Some strains of Britannomyces give a textural component without an aromatic, and some is just aromatic and no taste. Some, depending on the degree of the Britannomyces, be so overpowering the wine. I like a little bit of Britannomyces, but I like it this much. Because more than that just means like you're not cleaning your barrels in your cellar well enough. That's basically what it is. So I like a little bit in certain wines. But I use class of the Canary Islands. We talk in some real funk to funk wines. But not Britannomyces necessarily, just like very weird wild grapes. Great questions there on Britannomyces. Let's see. Glad to see you so excited about chemistry. Yes, getting there. So, yes, we do become our parents as we age. That is so true. That is 100% true, and I'm very lucky. Anyone who's met some mom knows that I'm lucky to become my mom when I with age. So, awesome. So I'm gonna go back to these wines and taste them again and see how they've changed. And then if you, I know, Dominica, you said you hate the picking of the wines, but if there's one cru that you think you would most like gravitate towards buying in the future of these 4 that we tasted, please tell me what they are. And if there's any other tasting notes that you want to add about either the Milan Avant, the Morgon, or go back and try the first 2 again and tell me how they have changed as a result of the progression that you're tasting. So going back to this Milan Avant, definitely more of those black fruits are coming out and like cooked herbs. Let's see if the tannins have softened a little bit. Amanda Staples is all about that Hirsch. Awesome. Yeah, those tannins have not softened on that Milan Avant. Super grippy. I definitely get a lot of that like iron on the finish, which I would like. I would need that wine with food for sure. That like we're going from pairing Beaujolais, cru Beaujolais with fish, crab cakes or salmon, to steak. That is the variation, the degree of variation that we have, even for cru Beaujolais, not just like even Beaujolais Village to cru. that's just wild to me, how much of a range this wine has. So let's go back to that Discom. And I think this would be my favorite, even if I didn't want to go on a date with the winemaker. I love the balance of these intense floral notes with that funk. It's wildly complex to me. But this is not morning wine. Like that Hirschenhaus is morning wine. That's like, I could drink that for breakfast or brunch or lunch. And we've like slowly increased the seriousness of these wines. But I love all 4 of them. I really do. See, Tawana says favorites in order. Number 4 is favorite, okay? Then number 1. So number 4 is that Descamps Morgon. Number 1, Hirschenhaus. Number 2 and 3 are tied. So the Côte de Brie and Moulin Avant, okay? Splitting hairs, buy them all again. Yes, truly. These virtual classes are always about splitting hairs, I find. Jen Long says, definitely buy 3 in order, and then 2, 1, and 4. Awesome. So I love this. 4 very different wines, and all of you are very different people. And for everyone tuning in, there's 10 more people who are watching this without being like logged in. So hopefully you've all expanded your palette about what you want to pair red wine with. Hopefully we've expanded our idea about what Beaujolais is, about what Burgundy is even, because Burgundy isn't just Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, it's also Gamay. Hopefully if anyone came into this thinking that all Beaujolais is like Beaujolais Nouveau, we've changed that idea quite a bit. Not that I say don't drink Beaujolais Nouveau for Thanksgiving, absolutely do so with a gusto. But the idea is to expand our idea of what these wines are. So, Samam, what was your favorite? What if you were to gravitate towards one cru to buy again? What would you like go through the grocery store, the wine store, and see a cru name and
the Côte de Brie. Yeah.
All right, Samam's all about some Côte de Brie. So, yeah, I support that decision. I support the decision to love any of these crews for sure, though. Chris Nelson says the almost Fab 5 rating average. Okay, number 4 highest. Oh, cool! That's awesome. Number 2, which was the Côte de Brie. Number 3, the Moulin Avant, and then number 1, the Hirschenhaus. So every single person has had a different degree. I think that's the mark of a good class of wide-ranging wines. If everyone agreed that one wine was not as good as another, then the class would definitely not be as fun. So some pop's about to walk through the door, so he might have an opinion later. So if there are any, you have the wine tags on there, and they have the prices on each of the tags. Obviously, 6 or more bottles, you get 20% off, whether it's mix and match or just solid. So if you would like to order any more for the holiday season, this is the time to, and by that I mean through October, Halloween and Thanksgiving. That's my favorite time to drink Beaujolais. Let me know, and I would be happy to go out your way with some Beaujolais for you to share with your family and friends. So thank you all so much for tuning in. My website is now live with all of my current wine features, with all the reviews, and you can actually build your order through the website for more easy ordering capabilities. So all of my classes are up there for right now. I think the classes that are up there are probably going to be the only ones I do through the end of the year, just because private events and holiday times just get a little bit crazy. But thank you all so much for making these virtual classes so fun for me to host and for me to try out all these wines. Thank you to Saman for always opening up her house on Wednesdays and for delivering all the wine on Wednesdays to you guys. And I really look forward to hopefully seeing you all in the future. Until then, stay safe, stay sane, and what's my third one? Stay safe, stay sane, and healthy. Healthy, that's right. We're in the middle of the pandemic. Stay safe, stay sane, and stay healthy. We'll see you next time, y'all. Cheers.